Today we are talking about my custom mechanical keyboard. I'm going to tell you all the parts that are in it, and I'm going to tell you why. Let's get into it. I'm going to start this video by saying that this is actually the first keyboard that I've built. This video is for people who are in my position about 2 months ago. I was completely overwhelmed with all this information, so all of the research that I've done has been compiled into this video to hopefully help you if you're looking to build a keyboard. Okay, I think a good place to start is going to be talking about the board itself. This board is the Keychron V1, and it is a 75% hot swappable mechanical keyboard. Now, I threw a lot of terms there, so let's break it down. 75% refers to the size of the keyboard. And if you're looking to build a keyboard, this is probably what you're going to have to figure out first, is what size keyboard you want. Keyboards can vary in size from either 100% all the way down to 40%. This particular keyboard is 75%. Now 100% means that you get the full keyboard with the number pad on the side and everything. Now, the smaller you get, you start losing things. You lose the number pad probably first, and then as you get smaller and smaller, you can even lose the F keys on the top row. I went with the 75% because I thought it was a good balance. I kept my F keys, and I only lost the number pad on the side. Now, I think this is a good size to work with, and if you need a number pad on the side, then you can go with 100%, but I think 75% was right for me. Now, another term that I threw out there is hot swappable. Hot swappable basically means that you can put any switch in you want, or take out the switches whenever you want to as well. If your keyboard is not hot swappable, that means that your switches are probably going to be soldered to your board, and you basically won't be able to switch them out. So if you're going to do a custom keyboard, I highly suggest you find a hot swappable keyboard to work with. Now, there are some other features that are worth mentioning on this Keychron V1, so let's go over them really quickly. The Keychron V1 can be had in a couple of different flavors. You can either get it bare bones, which means there are no switches or keycaps, it just comes with the board itself, or you can get it fully built, and that comes with the switches and keycaps, obviously. I decided to go with the bare bones version because I had already determined that I was going to switch out the switches and I wanted new keycaps, so it would probably be easier for me just to get the bare bones version. So that's why I went the bare bones version. Some other options that you have with the keyboard is to get a knob. There is a knob on the top right of my keyboard. I decided to opt for the knob, or you can decide not to get the knob. You can program that knob to do a variety of things. I use it for volume at the moment, and it's something that I enjoy. I just like that it's there. So I decided to spend a little bit extra and get the knob. Another option that you have is the case itself. This case that I have is translucent black, or you can get a non-translucent solid black, and that's up to your personal preference. Now, some noteworthy things that this board comes with are a silicone pad at the bottom of the keyboard. This is supposed to absorb sound as you type on the keyboard, which is nice. Sometimes you have to add that in yourself, but this keyboard comes with it, which is very nice. This keyboard also comes with some foam inside to again help dampen the sound as you type, and it comes with a braided USB-C cord. The USB-C cord also comes with an adapter for USB-C to USB-A in case you need it, so that is nice. The cord is detachable. The keyboard also has a switch on the back that can either switch it to be used on a Mac or switch it to be used on a Windows, so that is nice to have that flexibility. There is also RGB backlighting on the keyboard, so that lights up your keyboard and looks very nice. You can change it in a variety of ways. And lastly, Keychron includes some VIA software, which basically allows you to remap any of the keys, change the lighting effects, and do a number of things to completely customize the programming of the board. Okay, I think that covers everything about the board, so now let's talk about the switches. Now, if you're just getting into this, switches can be super confusing just because of the amount of options out there. I decided to keep it super simple for myself, and I went with the Akko CS Lavender Purple switches. Now, the reason these are simple is because they were in stock on Amazon. So I just ordered them on Amazon, and they came just like any other Amazon product would, which made it super simple. Another thing that you'll find in this keyboarding world is something called group buys, and I just didn't want to mess with any of that. It takes much longer, it sounds very complicated and kind of scary. I would rather buy from Amazon in that sense, and these were in stock, like I said, so that made things very simple. Now, the other thing that I really liked about these switches is that they have the option to come pre-lubed from the factory. If you don't know what a pre-lube switch is, it's basically applying a small amount of oil to the internals of the switch which allows for a smoother action and a better noise. Lubing is something that is very tedious and can take a lot of time. The process basically involves you having to take apart each individual switch and very meticulously lubing the internals of the switch and then putting them back together, and then you have a lubed switch. So the fact that these came pre-lubed from the factory is something that I liked because I don't have any of the lubing equipment. I didn't really want to mess with any of it as a beginner, so I think it was a good option for me. Now, what else can I tell you about these switches? These are tactile switches, and if you don't know, there are basically three types of switches, more or less. There are tactile switches, linear switches, and clicky switches. These are tactiles, and I went with tactile switches because I do like some of the feedback that I get when I type on the keyboard, so I found that very nice. This is all up to your personal preference, of course, so do some research and see which switch is right for you. Now, as far as tactile switches go, even though they are considered to be a budget option, they are still pretty good. Now, when I was doing my research for these switches, I found actually a lot of people comparing these to the Holy Pandas. And that's a very well-known switch, a very high-quality switch, but it also comes with a pretty big price tag. Those cost about $1.20 per switch at the time of this video. But if you compare those to these are about 22 cents per switch. And when you add it all up for the amount of switches that you need to buy for your keyboard, that makes quite a big difference. Now, the last thing I'll tell you about these switches is that the back of the box tells you that during the keystroke, the tactile bump can be felt at the top of the switch press. I don't know what any of this means on the back of this box, so I find it very confusing, but what I can tell you based on personal experience is that by pressing the key, I can feel the tactile bump at the top of the keystroke. It's not at the middle, at the bottom, it's at the top as soon as you start pressing the key. So I hope that helps. Now, the last piece to the puzzle were the keycaps, and I got the keycaps from DIYkeycap. The initial reason I went with DIYkeycap is because they offered an endless amount of customization to the color of the keycaps, which I found very nice. You could customize the color to the point where you could put a specific color hex code into their website for what color you wanted the keys to be. Now, like most things, I found some pros and cons. I already mentioned one of the pros being the customization for the colors. Another pro that I found is that these keycaps are made out of PBT. Most keycaps are either made out of PBT plastic or ABS plastic. And PBT is typically considered the higher quality out of the two, but some things can vary. Now, as far as the cons, these did take a while to get to me. From the time that I placed the order to the time that they got to me was about a month's time. Now, they are a custom product, so I was kind of okay with that, but just be warned. Another thing that I found to be slightly unfortunate is that the colors were actually a little bit off. Now, I mentioned earlier that you could put in the exact hex code for the color of the keycaps that you wanted. And that's exactly what I did. On the screen, you'll see the hex code that I used for the darker keys on these keycaps. Upon receiving the keycaps, you'll see that there's actually a pretty big color difference between what I thought I was getting and what I actually got. I know that there can be some variation between what you actually see on the screen and what is on print, but these look way more purple to me than I was expecting. I still think the keyboard looks good, but that's just something to keep in mind if this is something that you want to do. Okay, so what were my final thoughts once everything was put together? I was thoroughly impressed. I think everything came together extremely well. The keyboard feels super solid. There's no rattles. I think it sounds great. I think it feels great. Overall, I'm very happy with it. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. My old keyboard is also a mechanical keyboard, but it's relatively inexpensive. And I got it several years ago before I knew anything about custom keyboards. Now, another member of this household pointed out to me that it's very loud, and I agree with them now. The old keyboard is extremely loud and extremely hollow, and now that I have something to compare it to, this new keyboard is miles better. Now, the final thing that I'll say is that I was trying to keep this board in a relatively reasonable budget. I was willing to spend some money because it is custom, wanted it to be nice. I wanted this to be a good experience for when I work, because I do work on the computer a lot. So I was willing to spend a little bit extra, but I ended up spending more than I thought. So if you're looking to build your own keyboard, I would suggest setting a budget and probably expanding it a little bit. With everything combined, I ended up spending about $175 on this board. And if you compare that to some of the other boards that exist out there, that is considered budget, I think, but that is expensive. So that's it. If you're looking for a way to kind of enhance your work experience and want something nicer to type on, I think this is something worth considering. If you found any of the products in this video interesting, I have everything linked down below. Some of the links do help the channel and your support is appreciated. So I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.